morning, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bree and today's video is going to be books to get you out of a reading slump. So I feel like going into March is always when I kind of feel myself going into a bit of a reading slump, because December I've usually read a ton because I want to finish out the year strong, and then January I'm excited for new goals, so then I read a ton, and then by mid-February I kind of like peter out. And I think last year I averaged about 5 or 6 books a month, and that's still kind of what I've been doing. But in March, I only read 1 book, and I had started Way of Kings, I think it was Rhythm of War, but I didn't finish that till like probably November. So I only completed 1 book. That is not very untypical of me during that time. So I thought maybe you might be going through something similar and might want some recommendations. These are all going to be like mystery thrillers, horror kind of, because that's what I've been primarily reading. So that's what like comes to mind for me. So yeah, I'm going to break it up into different things kind of by vibe or by a certain characteristic. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So the first like vibes I guess I have is where it's just eerie. It's kind of like a gothic horror where maybe not a lot happens, but the whole vibe and suspense. There's a lot of suspense and eeriness to it. I always find those books just keep me reading because I want to know what's going to happen next. What is this eerie feeling I'm getting? So I find that I like read them really quickly. First one I have is The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This is a classic horror, gothic horror. So it's basically about this governess, and she goes to this house to take care of these 2 children. Weird things start happening and she can't really tell if she's going insane or if it's all real. And it's just like this very eerie situation. And if you like horror and you like creepy children and stuff, I feel like this could be a good one. It's not over the top horror, but because it is more of a gothic type horror. But I just found it so creepy, and it's really short. So this copy is only 125 pages, so really quick. You can fly through it if you're just like having a hard time picking up a book and you like those kind of elements. I think this could be a really good one. I just think the whole eeriness adds to you wanting to keep reading. So the next one is also a classic, and I've talked about this before, but it's We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. I know some people have had mixed feelings about this, but this is a book that I absolutely loved, and I actually kind of want to reread soon. I just have so many books that I haven't read that I want to get to. It's about these 2 women, and the older sister is taking care of the younger sister, and they're in their home that the rest of their family was killed by arsenic poisoning, and everyone in town believes that the older sister did it. And it's about like them living in this town, but then like strange things start happening again, and you kind of like uncover the truth of what happened. And it's just so perfectly eerie. I think the suspense that's built and just the weird feelings you get, even though like not a ton happens. Same with The Turn of the Screw. It's just like so good. Pippi, no, Pippi, that's my antique, my great grandma's table. You can't be on there. No, I'm sorry. You can be in my lap though. Do you want to sit here? We don't get on there, baby. Sorry. What was I saying? So yeah, it's just like the vibes they give are just so eerie that you just like have to know what happens. And I do think the ending of this one was more satisfying to me than the ending of this one, but I liked them both. So then the last book is actually a middle grade, but it is a middle grade horror, and it's the first middle grade horror I've ever read. I don't know if it's actually shelved under horror, but it definitely reads like horror, and that's The Secret of Nightingale Wood by Lucy Strange. Basically, it's this young girl, and it's supposed to be in 1919, and they moved to this new house after her brother has passed, and the mom is very ill and is being seen by a doctor, and the dad has to work abroad to pay for everything, and she has a nanny. And just things start happening. She starts seeing things, but her mom's also very ill, and there's this doctor, and just no one's really believing her and what she's saying in the woods, but also there's just so much more going on in the house that I just find it so interesting. It was really creepy. Like, I had to know what was happening, and I felt myself like on the edge of my seat while reading this. I don't think it's like it's not so gruesome like a horror could be because it's for middle grade readers. And so that's why I think it's like a good one. It's not like gruesome. So if you don't like gruesome horror, this isn't that. It's just the feeling it gives you. It's just so creepy and you're just like have to know what happens, but also like I felt so scared for her. And I think that this was just done so well. So I hope to pick up more Lucy Strange in the future. This was a thrift store find that I had known nothing about. I just saw the cover and was like, oh, that's gorgeous. I'm gonna pick it up. And then I got into it and I was like, oh my gosh. And this is actually what got me into wanting to read more horror, because I was like, I loved this so much. Even though it was middle grade, I was like, I love this. I want to know what adult horror is like as well. So those are my 3 recommendations for like eerie, suspenseful, you don't really know what's going on kind of books. So the next one, I just have 2, and one of them I've read, the other one I haven't, but I think it's going to be similar in style to the first one. And it's books that play with time. I find that playing with time, it really adds like another level of not knowing what's going on and just keeps you like guessing on what's happening. So this is one that I really enjoyed, and it's The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I found the mystery itself. I haven't read something like this before. It gives me kind of Black Mirror vibes, and it's basically about this guy who is put into this body, and every day he's in a different body, and he's going through this party trying to figure out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle. And I think he only has 7 days to figure it out. And again, each day he's in a different body of a different person who is attending this party. He doesn't really know why he's there. He just knows he has to figure out what's happening. So he's also trying to figure out what's going on and why he's there. And it was just a ride from start to finish. And I just found it so interesting. And the fact that you're playing with time and he's jumping from different bodies and like things like that. I just think it kept it so interesting that you are always getting a new perspective and you never really felt bored. So for that, I just think it's such a good book to like get you out of a reading slump, because you're gonna just be like, what's going on, and want to keep reading. And that's how I felt when I read this. Now the next one is The 22 Murders of Madison May by Max Berry, and this feels similar to that. So basically it is that this journalist is assigned to report on Madison May's murder, and she ends up getting in a conspiracy involving a powerful group who have harnessed the ability to slip between lives to move from one version of reality to another. And she's also trying to seek the truth behind Madison May, the woman who is murdered over and over in different ways wherever she goes. So it's definitely like that same idea of like someone's being murdered over and over and you're kind of in like a time loop, but also like the whole story is about playing with time. This is, I guess, more, it was in the science fiction section, so it makes sense that this might be a little more science fiction, but it also is definitely more mystery, and I think that those 2 elements are going to make for a really good story that would keep you reading. And I've heard other people read this who really did enjoy it, and it sounds like a quick read too. It's not very long. It's only 322 pages, so it's a quicker read and you can get through it, where this one is definitely a bit chunkier, but not by much. It's 450-ish pages. So yeah, these are just 2 that I think anything playing with time and mystery, I think adds to getting through it quick and getting you out of a reading slump. Okay, hopefully I don't look too different. I had to pause and do some wedding stuff, so I think I just finished with my time books, and now I'm going to go to it's the same author, but I think this kind of book is a really good one to get you out of a reading slump. And I don't know how to describe them other than like action-packed thrillers. And the one I read is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. And then there's Blacktop Wasteland by S.A. Cosby. So I read Razorblade Tears just this month and I flew through it. It's so action-packed from like start to finish. It's about 2 men and their sons were married and had a baby girl, and then they are killed and the dads are now trying to get revenge for their sons. And there's so much more to this. It deals with so much, but the revenge part is like very action-packed from start to finish. It's a wild ride, I think, in terms of just like it feels like you're reading an action movie, and I loved that. I felt like I just couldn't put it down because something was always happening. And so I picked up Blacktop Wasteland by him because I think this is going to offer me the same thing that this did, which this is about a guy who he is out of the game. He used to drive the getaway cars in heists, and he doesn't want to do that anymore. He's done with it, but then he's offered the chance to go on a heist of a lifetime, and he feels like he can't say no. So then he is doing one last job, and it's going to end up ultimately becoming something more and get him into probably some trouble. So I just think these kind of books are so good. Like, you just want to know what happens, and your like heart is racing because there's so much action, and you just like don't know what's going to happen to these characters. And I just think he writes such good characters. They really feel like real people. So that's why I would choose any kind of book like this. And if you have any recommendations for more action-packed like thrillers like this, I don't really like as much like spy novels, but more of just something like someone gets wrapped up in a bigger thing and they have to go and like seek revenge or something like that where it's action-packed. I really enjoyed this, and I can't wait to read more by this author, but also just in general read more books like this. So the next two I'm going to talk about are just ones that if you want a book where it's just kind of a wild ride, and one of them you may be confused the whole time and the other one is just kind of out there, and I think that those kind of books just keep you wanting to read because you just want to understand what's happening, or you're just finding it so ridiculous. So I have 3 of them. The first one is The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. So while this one isn't like the most out there book, I just think the concept in itself is just like a wild ride, and seeing these moms have to go up against a vampire in their town, and I feel like as you get towards the end it gets a little crazier and crazier. I just think that this kind of book it takes you for a ride, and you're just along for the ride, and you just want to keep knowing what happens because it's just so ridiculous in a lot of ways. And I think Grady Hendrix does this well. This is my first Grady Hendrix, but I've heard just based on reviews of other books by Grady Hendrix that is kind of the theme throughout the different books. And I have My Sister's Exorcism, which I really want to get to soon, and I think that will be kind of similar, where it's just like kind of like spoofy type tropes, but then you end up just wanting to know what happens. The next one, which is one a lot of people have heard of, which is Bunny by Mona Awad. I have yet to read this, but by so many of the reviews I've watched, I know this is going to be up my alley, but I also know that it's going to be a wild ride. And I've read books similar to this before, where it's just like you don't know what is happening, and you kind of get to the end, it might be a little confused, or it's just over the top, and this sounds like that kind of book. So this is about a girl who goes in her master's program, and she ends up getting with this clique that they call themselves the Bunnies, and then some just crazy stuff starts going down. I think maybe there's something with experiments and all this stuff, and she just gets sucked into this like cultish kind of group, and just wild stuff starts happening. So I think stuff like this is really going to get you out of a reading slump because, again, you just don't know what's happening, and you just are along for the ride, and it can be nice to just get a book where you're just like trying to figure out as things progress, but then you like can't really figure things out, so it keeps you wanting to know more because you just want to get to the end and have it all figured out, and maybe by the end you don't. The last book in that category is going to be Finley Donovan is Killing It by Elle Casamano. I hope to read this month. It's probably going to be one of my next pickups. This is about a woman who is in a Panera, and she's writing a book, and she gets mistaken for a hit woman, and now she has to kill someone. And I've heard such good reviews about this. Like, basically everyone I've seen who's read it has loved it and just said that it's completely out there. Like, it's just a wild book where you kind of have to just be along for the craziness and the ridiculousness of it. And I think this kind of book can really get you out of a reading slump because it just like doesn't take itself too seriously, and you just have fun with it. And I think sometimes with thrillers, they can be very dark, and to read something like this can just like get you out of a reading slump because you just have fun and you just are along for the ridiculous ride that it is. And yeah, so I'm really excited to read this. I'm thinking I'm going to try to read in March so that I can get myself out of reading slumps. Now we're on to my kind of book genre of choice, which is like detective type mysteries or sleuth type mysteries. And I feel like these always get me out of a reading slump just because you're trying to figure out what's happening. You're trying to figure out who did it along the way. And I think that just keeps me engaged. So first one I have is the first two. There's a third one out in the series, and that's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, and then Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. And this one I think particularly could get you out of a reading slump because it's mixed media. So there's podcasts in here, there's journal entries, there's just regular dialogue and things like that. But it like changes up how you're reading, and so that keeps me engaged. I just felt like every page was different, so then I'd be like, oh, I want to read a little bit more because this one's just a podcast episode, or this one's just an interview, so I can get through it really quick, and then you get to the next one and want to know more. This follows Pip, and she is in her senior year. She's doing a capstone project on who killed Andy Bell, because the town believes it was Andy Bell's boyfriend, Sal Singh, who killed Andy, but Pip doesn't believe that that's what happened. She believes there's more to the story, and she wants to uncover it. And she goes on this whole journey throughout the book. And then the second one follows after that. There's something else that goes on. So this one I recently read for a book club, and I think it's a great one for a detective mystery to get you out of reading slump, and that's The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman. I think that you're following a group in a retirement home, and on Thursdays they meet in the Jigsaw Room, and they have their Thursday Murder Club where they look at cold cases and they try to figure out who did it and what happened, and then they find themselves wrapped up in a mystery themselves, a current one, and they're trying to figure out who killed this person. And there is so much in the story. Like, there's subplots within the plot, and there's like multiple murders and just like so many different things happening. Plus you're getting the perspective of these retired folks, and one of them is written from the perspective of Joyce, and she's writing in her diary, so you're getting like Joyce's inner thoughts, and then the rest are in like a third-person narration style. The banter between them and all that, and the ridiculousness that they kind of get into trying to figure out these murders and their different skills, and like they're just so sweet that you can't help but like love it. I found the characters so endearing, but also again that like mixed media element where you're going between diary entry and regular narration style. I think that kept me engaged, but also just he writes really good, witty characters. So the next one is another classic detective type mystery, Woman Sleuth, and that's Dead Dead Girls by Nikisa Afia. So I think that this was a pretty good book in that I think it's her first book, so I felt like there were some things, the mystery itself, I could kind of guess, but I think that the world and the characters she writes feel very vivid, and I'm really excited to see where the series goes. But this is in 1926. Yep, 1926 in Harlem, and Louise is a woman who works in a restaurant, and she ends up getting involved in these murders of these women. She works about the speakeasy that these women work at, and she finds herself in a situation where she's arrested, and she's given the choice to either go to jail or to help the police and get into places that they can't because they just can't walk in and ask questions like she can. So she is then now working with the police to find out who's killing these women. I think the characters in this book are well done, and I think that it's just a different type of detective mystery because it's a perspective that I just haven't gotten before. And I think detective mysteries in general pull me out of reading slump because you just want to know who did it, where you want to pick out the red herrings and stuff like that. And I think the added of the 1920s, the atmosphere of this, really just like made me want to keep reading and know what was going to happen. So the last one I have is a cozy mystery, and while I'm recommending this cozy mystery, I'm kind of just recommending cozy mysteries in general. This one is Laura Childs. It's her tea shop mystery series. So I've read Death by Darjeeling and Gunpowder Green. The last one in this book is Shades of Earl Grey, but she has a lot more that you can see back here. This follows our main character, Theodosia, and she owns a tea shop with a young girl who is around like her 20s. She does all the cooking and stuff, and she has another man who works for her, and he is like the expert on tea, and they're just like a cute group of friends. The first book starts off where they're serving tea at this big party fundraiser type event, and someone falls dead of poisoning by their tea. So the police obviously look to them to see if one of them maybe did it, and so they find themselves wrapped up in this mystery, and from there it just like gets more ridiculous, and now the rest of the series is they're solving murders. I just think cozy mysteries are so good because of like the friend dynamic. They just make you feel good and cozy, and they're kind of ridiculous. Like, it's very ridiculous that this tea shop owner would be solving murders, but you just feel like kind of cozy. Again, they're called a cozy mystery when you're reading them. And so I think they're really good to get out of a reading slump because they're not something you have to take so seriously. You just can pick them up, and they're short. Like this, each one was like 200 pages or less. So it's not a big commitment, but it's just like the atmosphere, I just think helps. So like if you need a book that you can go back to, a series you can go back to, these are generally really long series, just to like pick something up and get reading again, I think cozy mysteries are a good option. My last pile, I'm just going to tell you, I guess in general, why I'm picking these books, because let's see, 3 of them I haven't read and 3 of them I have, but I picked them all for the same kind of reason. So a lot of these are going to be like friend dynamic type thrillers, and a lot of them also play with like timelines. And I think that the reason they're so good and can get you out of a reading slump is because you're still kept on your toes, because every time you get to the end of the chapter, usually there's a cliffhanger and then you're sent back in time or forward in time and you're trying to figure out the mystery, but you keep having that benefit of like going back and forth. So every time you feel like putting it down, you're back in another timeline and you want to pick it back up. Oh, also I was gonna say, friend dynamics I think are really good because you're always trying to figure out like what secrets people are hiding. There's just so much going on in friend dynamics to unpack throughout the story that you never really can find yourself bored, and that's what I like about them. But I also think some people have done it better than others, but these are just some of the ones I've read. So I guess I'll start with the one I'm currently reading, and I'm over halfway, and that's The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. And this is about a friend group, and they're having kind of a reunion of sorts. They were friends in Oxford, and now they're in their 30s, and they're at this remote cabin in Scotland, and they get snowed in, and now someone's dead. The way this is told is you don't know who's died. They get there, then the murder happens 3 days after they get there. So you're flashing from the beginning of them getting there to the 3 days later. And there's also a gamekeeper and a, she runs the cabin. This is suspenseful because you don't know who's died. You just know one of them has died, and one of them had to have done it because they've been snowed in. There's also like another couple there that they don't really know anything about. But you're getting multiple perspectives, but you're not getting everyone's perspectives, and I think it's just interesting to figure out like who's hiding what. I think I'm going to talk about the ones I haven't read yet first. So this is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. So this follows a guy who gets out of jail and he goes back after the murder of someone, and he is going back and figuring out, like, it's revealed what actually happened. But basically this is a group of theater people are on stage and one of them dies, and it's again like a who did it, and it's this dynamic, but it's coming from like a work friendship but acting kind of dynamic, and there's that added like pressure of trying to be the best because you're in this like kind of cutthroat environment. So this one I'm excited to pick up, and I've heard really good things. The next one is Ruth Ware, The Line Game, and it's about a group of girls who were in boarding school, and they used to have fun by playing this line game where they would make up stuff and lie to people to try to get away with it. It ends up turning much more deadly. They end up getting kicked out, I believe, and then now it's years later and they receive like a call that they hoped never would happen, and I believe one of them may be dead. And I think again that friend dynamic, that added mystery of like what happened years before, so you're probably getting a dual timeline, would really be good to get you out of reading slump. The next one is Such a Quiet Place by Megan Miranda, and this is again a girl gets acquitted from murdering this couple in this cul-de-sac. Hi, Pippi. Hi. You want to come sit? She comes back to the neighborhood, and all the neighbors are suspicious of her because they believe that she's the one who killed it, but actually a lot of stuff starts coming out about the neighbors and the secrets they hold. So again, secrets, friend dynamics, neighbor dynamics, that kind of thing. What are people hiding? So 2 more. But this one I read in October, and I flew through it. I was doing a 24-hour reading vlog, but I read this in a day. I don't know if it was 24 hours. What are you doing? You're not trying to get in trouble, are you? No, we leave that alone. That's poisonous. How are you going to get down? How are you going to get down? You're stucksies now. Oh, okay. Guess you're not so stucksies. Do you need help? Whoa! There you go. There you go. Can Mama get through these last 2 books? Good. So anyway, so I read this in a day. I think it's one of those books you can just fly through. And this is about a girl who 10 years before, I believe, her best friend went missing and no one ever found her or knows what happened to her. Her dad is now in like a retirement home and he's kind of like lost his memories and stuff, and they're running out of money to pay for him to be in this place, so they have to sell their childhood home. And so her brother calls her back and she goes back, and it's about like uncovering what actually happened back then. So she gets to the house and then it flashes forward 15 days, and then the next chapter would be 14 days and then 13 days and 12 until it gets back to the first day she got there and everything is revealed. I just thought that it was really well done. I liked that playing with time. It was a different way than just flashing back to, you know, back 10 years prior. Again, it's about people holding secrets and a small town and just friend dynamics and all that kind of stuff. And it really, like, I had to know what happened. And then the last one, which I think you could probably guess, but is my favorite so far of the year. And that's In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is about a group of college friends who go to a college reunion. When they were in college, their last year, I believe, one of the group friends was murdered, and the police believe the boyfriend did it, but he is never been charged with anything, and now they're gone back to this reunion and they're forced to confront what happened that day. And so you're flashing from the reunion to back in their college days, but it's not a linear thing. It's not like you go from like freshman year to sophomore year to senior year. You're kind of flipping through different parts of the years just to reveal different things, and everyone has a secret they're holding on to, and it's just about like jealousies and insecurities and things like that. And I thought it was so well done. It was definitely the way that the story is told with the dual timeline, and you're mostly getting one perspective, but you sometimes get a couple other perspectives. And I just thought like everything was balanced so well. There was so much going on that you just couldn't help but like wanting to know what happened. And very twisty, I might say. So yeah, there you have it. Those are all the books I recommend to get you out of a reading slump. I'm hoping to get to a lot of books this year so that I can give you better and more recommendations, but these are the ones that I feel like have done well for me, or I feel are going to be like books that I'm gonna love, and so that's why I'm recommending them. But if you have any ideas of books that have gotten you out of a reading slump or anything like that, I'd love if you leave them down below. Or if you have any more in these kind of genres, because these are things that I really love to read, I would love to have your suggestions, and so I can get to them and maybe do some reading vlogs to review them and just like have more content to give you guys. So yeah, I really appreciate you watching, and I hope that you enjoyed, and if you want to subscribe, I'd appreciate that too. So that's all for now, and I will see you next time.